Hey, Angie, thanks everybody for joining this episode of the Advisory Board podcast. I am joined today by the lovely Angie Bynum, who
I
is
did.
the founder, CEO of Villager Magazine and an expert in direct marketing. Angie, I don't want to elaborate too much on it. Why don't you add a little bit of color to that? What else should everyone know as they listen to this about you?
Well, just a quick introduction of where we started out. About 11 years ago, we had another business, and our biggest challenge was figuring out how to market our business in an affordable way, targeted way. It really was our biggest challenge in our company, and so we ended up creating our own direct mail piece. And fast forward 11 years, it started out as just a really small community magazine, and now we mail to about 200,000 homes, and we've franchised and done some fun things with that. But then in addition to that, we've just added to our marketing toolkit, I guess, and we send out all sorts of fun direct mail pieces now, and we just love marketing and everything to do with advertising, but mainly direct mail. So
Great. Well, I'm glad we've got you on the call. And I think let's start off with something a little bit lighter and fun, maybe a couple of examples. But tell me a little bit about maybe some of the coolest or most effective, or even the funniest, like direct mail pieces that you've seen people use before that have been effective.
so we've done. I mean, it's been 11 years. Honestly, I mean, sometimes we're pushing companies to be, kind of fun and whimsical and do different things that stand out. One is funny, and this is actually an interesting thing. We had a company do a split test. It's actually a local plastic surgeon office that offer a hair restoration treatment that is really unique. I think they're the only ones in Utah that offer it. And we did a funny split test ad campaign, and they sent half of their ads went out was very attractive young man with a super thick, full head of hair, and the other one was just this funny old guy that had the comb over and the whole, the whole, look that some people are trying to avoid these days, and did a split test, and it was funny. The interesting thing is the young guy with the whole full head of hair won. So.
Okay, I would expect
So we ditched the funny guy with the comb over, but yeah, we did that. We've done more creative. I think funny. It's hard to get companies to step out and do something funny and whimsical, even though they're super effective campaigns. You actually were telling me about a campaign we recently did that I think is super clever. So maybe you should tell that.
Oh no. Well, in my bag, I've got a good buddy that I was an early friend of mine professionally who did direct mail. So I've always loved this concept, and maybe I'll share a story too, because I'll share one of his stories, even though it's not yours. It's funny, but we were going to a recent event. You're talking about the floppy disks, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we were going to an event. Now, ClientTether, we're a CRM with sales automation, online reputation, blah, 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 right? A technology platform designed for franchising. So we're going to a franchising conference. So we handpicked about I think about 250 people that we wanted to send a direct mail piece to. And we got floppy disks, like the three and a half floppies. And we put a label on them, and then we put them in padded envelopes, handwritten addresses, and sent them out. And the label, I can't remember what it said exactly, but something to the effect of, "Hey, is your franchise CRM software a little bit out of date?" Blah blah.
When you told me that, I just thought that is brilliant. And first of all, can you even find floppy disks anymore? So I don't even know where you came up with 250 floppy disks, but I think that's super fun.
Yeah, eBay, the secret.
eBay. You can find anything on eBay. So.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, and the thing I loved about that, it was whimsical and fun, but anything in direct mail, and really any type of marketing, but especially if you're going to have the expense of postage and sending something out, you want to have something that really engages the recipient. And then the other thing that I think was so great about that campaign you sent out is a package like that is going to make it up to the decision maker. Even if it's just a funny little piece, it is going to make it to the hands that you want to get to. It's not going to be, intercepted by a gatekeeper. So I thought that was a really fun idea.
Yeah, I mean, even during the Ricin days, I would still have opened up any handwritten envelope sent to me. So I'm like, oh, what's this? This is cool. Like, that's just how people are. And maybe I can share a funny, like a really interesting story. So a friend of mine, Chris Salway, and I'll tag him when I post this because he worked for a direct marketing guru for years, but they did like really weird stuff. And he told me about this campaign. He actually sent me one in the mail while he was working for this guy. It was a canoe paddle, so like 5 feet long. And on the blade of the canoe paddle, they used that real estate to put like vinyl lettering that said something like, I can't like, is your sales automation technology up a creek? I can't remember what it was exactly, but they were sending it to the CIOs of Fortune 500 companies. And so to these guys, I mean, the cost to get in front of one of these guys for this tech company they were working for was astronomical and just unlikely. And so they did this campaign. And he said the funniest part about it was, the ROI was like 12,000% ROI. It was like a crazy high ROI. He said, but we would get phone calls about the campaign, and people would think it was so creative. They'd call them up and say, I had 3 people follow the package from the mailroom to sit in my office while I opened your canoe paddle. That was genius.
Yeah.
They really would. They'd have an entourage, because when was the last time you saw somebody ship a canoe paddle into a corporate American office?
Right, right. Well, and you know what's really fun? There's a piece that it came out of an ad agency in Canada, and I think a couple of agencies since then has duplicated it. And I did, like anybody listening to this, Google cardboard record player ad campaign, and they actually took a piece of cardboard that folded, you opened it, and there was an actual 45 record inside, and the cardboard could fold, and they had a pin and everything, and you actually stuck in a pencil and rotated the record, and it would play the messaging. And it was, I mean, it actually wasn't a crazy expensive campaign. Probably the paddle was much, much more expensive, but it just, it took off like wildfire, and it's actually one of the most well-known direct mail campaigns ever, just because it was so unique. And then it also engaged the recipient. And so, a piece like that probably was passed around the whole office, shown to their colleagues, really made the rounds. And that's the ultimate goal of every marketing campaign, is to get as many eyeballs as possible. So fun piece like that.
I totally agree. And I think we could almost spend the whole show just sharing creative and funny ideas, the whole episode. But it brings me to wonder, like, I've also seen really terrible direct marketing pieces where people send, like, they're trying to do it, but literally send me like a foam tchotchke in the mail. I'm like, why? I had somebody once, they sent me a poop emoji, a foam poop emoji in the mail. And I was like, what? I don't get it. It had their name on it. And I was like, let me get this straight. You just sent me, it was some sales technology company at the time. I was VP of sales at a translation company. And they're like, but they're trying to get me to use their service. I'm like, you just sent me a foam poop emoji with your logo on it because you want me to use your sales service. Like, there was no connection, no emotional connection. I was like, well, that was a pretty crappy campaign, pun intended. And they wasted so much money on shipping because it was an $8 box,
Yeah, what I was going to say is that was probably a really, really expensive campaign. And I do think that sometimes in marketing, we get, we might fall in love with our own ideas and really, think that we, this is going to be so funny, or this is going to be so, get so much attention. And it might get attention, but you've got to know your audience. And you also have to have the ability to kind of step outside yourself and say, okay, if I received this from a random company I've never heard of, is it something I want to get? And I'm actually working with a couple of companies right now that we're sending a nice little care package that will have a little bottle of hand sanitizer that's branded, and then a stress ball, and just kind of how can we help it in, times like these, and that sort of thing. Relevant, hand sanitizer, most people are interested in right now. And so I actually think that's a well-targeted campaign. But on the flip side, some people in the office were suggesting, what if we send out a pen and, some other things that are fine. There probably will always be a place for branded pens and business cards. Like, those aren't going away. But if you're going to spend your money on shipping and packaging and all of that, like, be creative. Make sure it's something that you would want to receive in the mail before you send it to your target audience. And that's super important. Just know who you're sending it to. Make sure it's something that you would want to receive if you were in their shoes, and, try to not overthink it.
In fact, let's focus on that for a minute, because that's kind of where I wanted to go. Is like, how do we create an effective campaign? First stop in my mind, or the first step, has to be true audience profiling. Like, you have to understand who you're sending that message to, and you have to understand what they care about. Like, who are they? Are they middle-aged, Caucasian men that are highly educated? I've worked in organizations where we were marketing and selling to patent attorneys that were managing international content. Like, they were trying to localize patents and file nationally or internationally. So it was a very specific group of people. Your messaging is totally different than if you're trying to sell, let's say, direct mail pieces to local business people.
For sure.
So,
yeah. Well, and I think the important thing is, dialing in on who your target customer is. But then also, we work with B2B companies and then also B2C, and the approach is really, really different. And so with B2C, it's more about eyeballs. Like, as many people as can see your brand and your marketing usually is going to be the winner. I actually, sometimes I'll have a customer reach out to me and say, I want to do this really targeted mailing list, and I only want to hit this category of people. And sometimes there's definitely a place for that, even with, B2C companies, because really they've dialed in who their audience is. Mm-hmm. But the thing that sometimes they don't realize is, for the same cost, you could actually send a postcard or send a mailer out to, 100,000 homes versus maybe 7,000 of that target audience. Mm-hmm. And the target audience is great, but if within those 100,000 homes, you're still hitting those same 7,000, then you're actually you're just hitting so many more households. And for example, we have a assisted living client that wants to send a very targeted piece out, but wanted it to be, like 60 plus. And that is great. That is their typical target market. But then I suggested to them, I said, for the same price, we could actually saturate a whole geographical area, and you'll hit everybody within them, and you'll end up mailing to people like me, who I actually have an aging mother that I would probably be more of the target you want to send to rather than her. Mm-hmm. And so, again, sometimes we like to overthink it a little bit too much, or try to get a little bit too granular. Mm-hmm. And then we're actually missing, a big portion of the demographic that really are valuable people. And that's one thing with direct mail. There's thousands and thousands of things under the direct mail umbrella, which we won't get into all of that. But the fact is, the postage and there's different elements that it's actually much cheaper often, or the same cost often, to hit 10 times as many people, because the cost is just higher when you start getting targeted. And so really understanding who you want to reach, and then understanding some of the specifics with the postal service and, and printing and all of that, and really weighing the cost of getting really targeted versus blanketing an entire area. That's important, if you're a B2C business especially, is making sure you're not getting so targeted and actually spending more than needed, when you could have a more, general approach and possibly get better results.
That's interesting. So I hadn't thought about breaking it down that way. B2B, I think, you can be pretty laser focused, but B2C, I hadn't really thought about how the shotgun approach might actually be more cost advantageous. Do you mind sharing a couple of, if you're comfortable sharing a little bit about postal service and what kind of rates are available when you're doing bulk mail? And I don't know anything about that at all, but there are plenty of people probably listening that would want to know.
Yeah. So I'll just do a brief overview, but hopefully I can give some good advice that if somebody is just starting out in direct mail. First of all, in every community you've got local magazines, and of course there's like the big national mailers, like the envelope mailers, like Valpak and those And those can honestly be a great way to start because you're looking at 1 or 2 or 3 cents per household versus if you're doing a solo postcard, they're definitely more expensive, but then you get the benefit of standing alone. So usually, if we're starting out with a company, if budget's an issue, I recommend participating in one of those bulk mailers, whether you're in a magazine like our magazine or Valpak or any of those. There's a lot of great options out there. And in our community, we have probably 5 or 6 that I would totally recommend. And you can get great results. Maybe starting out with the approach of getting your name out there, sending some offers out, just getting that traffic and getting used to the world of direct mail. But then there are some people that really prefer the standalone piece. We're actually working with a company now that's new to the area. They really like the solo postcard, just the standalone postcard. Yeah. But their budget's tiny. And so we're actually printing 500 to 1,000 at a time, sending them to one postal route at a time, and then they'll just build on that. As they get more jobs coming in, they'll increase their printing. But really, the most cost-effective, if you want to hit the most eyeballs, choosing something that's, a piece that you're included with a lot of other businesses is going to be your most cost-effective. Yeah. And still really effective and a great way to get your name out there. Then you've got your...
I've got a question about that. So one of the thoughts that comes to my mind when you talk about like money mailers and Valpaks versus, or even the magazine approach where you've bundled a bunch of different things together into one place. Is there some additional draw for those people trying to advertise collectively like that, where the envelope comes and people say, oh, I wonder what's in here, and they're going to naturally start filtering through almost the coupon stack and discover you? Where is there an advantage, do you think, to that versus just sending out the solo postcard where nobody knows who you are, so like I don't know what that is and they throw it away? Do you think one gets more views than another if it's in a magazine or in an envelope of coupons versus just a single postcard?
It's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up because there's definitely advantages to both. And I don't think with any of these, there's no right or wrong way, but there's definitely an advantage, especially if you're a company that's maybe not as flashy and maybe not as interesting. We actually have an HVAC company that every time they advertise, they say, hey, can you put our ad opposite Dairy Queen? Because it's just, an ad full of coupons for, who doesn't want to stop on the Dairy Queen page? And so that's super smart, and they're getting that result that you're suggesting is, maybe an HVAC ad isn't super exciting and we're not all, necessarily looking for their ad in that moment, but yeah, there's definitely benefit there to being grouped together. So I think that's a really, really good point. So on one hand, with the solo piece, those eyeballs are on your piece and your piece only, but on the flip side, the magazines and the envelopes, people often will hang on to them maybe for another business, but then as they're, maybe 2 weeks later, their garage door breaks and they think, oh yeah, I hung on to that piece and I remember seeing a garage door company in there and I'm going to go check it out. So yeah, there's definitely that group benefit that comes from being contained in something like that.
That makes sense. Okay, thank you. I know you would know better than I would, but I've thought sometimes I'll open it up out of curiosity. Usually it's honestly in the trash before I would ever get to it. But I see the an envelope. I'm like, oh, I wonder if there are any coupons in there at the sporting goods stores. So I need to go buy some new cleats for my kids. So I'll start going through it. And I'm like, oh, I've never been here before. A new Mexican restaurant. How sweet. So I find things. Oh, I'm looking for something else. So that's cool. Mm-hmm. And also the cost-effective aspect of that is fantastic. I hadn't even thought about that it's that much less expensive per piece. Like, what is it for a postcard? 20 cents per household? 15 cents?
Postage alone is going to be about 19 cents if you do it on your own, or even if you hire a direct mail company to handle it for you. You're looking at, and that's just postage plus printing, and if you're getting fancy and creative with your printing, it's going to be more. So usually your least expensive option for a solo postcard is going to be about 25 cents a piece. And then if you're getting into mailing lists and really getting targeted, it can be up to 50 cents a piece. And so often, when we're working with a client, we'll say, okay, if you have $5,000 to spend, we could actually spread out your advertising and pay for a whole year of advertising in, something, if you're willing to be part of a group, a magazine or an envelope mailer or something like that, versus a one-time postcard. And so that's really important to look at. The other thing, if somebody is looking at doing postcards, I don't want to dog on postcards at all, because sometimes they are really, really effective, even though they are more expensive. But one thing I would recommend, the Postal Service actually has a really great website, and it's a tool we use it all the time, and I'll send my customers there as well. And it's just eddm.usps.com, and that stands for Every Door Direct Mail.usps.com. And it actually, you can plug in an address, you can select a mile radius if you want to see how many households are right around your location. You can actually select different postal routes that you might want to hit. It'll show you income demographics. Like, it's a really great tool. And it will also show you total, like if you select 3 postal routes, what the postage is going to be on that type of mailing. And so just really helpful information if somebody's just getting into the world of direct mail. And it actually gives you a little bit of power if then you reach out to some companies that might be doing it for you. You kind of already know, what your costs are looking like for when you're getting some estimates.
That's fantastic. I had no idea you could do that. So eddm.usps.com.
Yep, it's great.
That's great. Thank you, Angie.
Sure.
So let's go back a little bit to building out an effective direct mail campaign strategy, right? So the first thing that I think we definitely agree on is you have to have your audience defined. Like, who am I going after? What do they care about? So my messaging and my delivery and whatever I send them is going to be aligned. Where do you go from there? Like, as you're helping your clients design effective campaigns, do you go right into what the what? Like, what am I going to ship them? The when? Where do you take it from there?
Yeah, so this might be a fun point to talk about more B2B campaigns. And there's so many creative things you can do now, and we really, really recommend a well-rounded approach. So digital and direct mail can be really effective if you marry those together. We're actually working with a company right now that's doing a lot of digital marketing, and as those people are entered into their sales funnel and have expressed some interest, then they're actually acquiring their name, mailing address, phone number, getting permission to call and text, like all of those things, but then they're sending them an actual gift. And I won't divulge what the gift is, because it's a really creative thing that they're doing. It's a bank that's sending to a certain type of client. But it is something of value that the prospect will actually use and they're interested in getting. And so, it starts with digital marketing, but then they're actually sending a tangible package with an item inside that is really useful for them. And then once that item is sent out, they will have a staff of salespeople following up with a phone call. And so, building out your campaign from start to finish before you mail is really important. And I like to say, there's different when it comes to mailing out items. So, whether it's a gift like this bank is doing, or a promotional item, or even like the floppy disks that you sent out. What we like to recommend is have a pre-mailing and a post-mailing strategy for follow-up, or often, so we also work in video brochures. So this is a little bit of a tangent, but we do have tangible pieces with videos inside, and it is a more expensive piece. So often what we'll do is say, okay, make sure that you're either calling the client before saying, hey, I'm sending you a package, I want to make sure you're watching for it. Or call them immediately after and say, hey, I just want to make sure you received the package we sent. And the nice thing is about that, I don't know how much cold calling you've done on the phone, Dave, but anytime you have an in that is low pressure, it just puts the other person at ease. They're more inclined to talk to you rather than saying, hi, this is Angie with Villager Magazine. I want to get you to advertise. Me calling and saying, hi, this is Angie with Villager Magazine. I sent you something in the mail. I want to make sure it made it to your hands. Then all of a sudden, they don't think it's just a regular sales pitch. They're interested because I just sent them something. Mm-hmm. And, it just opens up a friendly conversation rather than your standard sales pitch. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I always recommend having some strategy when it's B2B. Have a strategy on either calling them first or emailing them first or calling them second. Well, and that's where, you are the text marketing expert, text messaging expert. So if you also are getting permissions on texting them, that's great too. Like shooting them a friendly text that says, hey, I just sent you a piece. Did you receive it?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. The most effective campaigns I've ever seen are blended media, but most people forget direct mail. And so, I would love to see, I haven't seen any studies ever that have blended those and then given the results of A/B testing to say, well, this is our digital campaign that just had email and phone calls. And this is our campaign where we sent out a package and then had email and phone calls happen afterward. I'd almost guarantee that second one would work way better, but I've never seen any empirical data to say that that's true. That's just my gut. Mm-hmm. But, mix in texting and things like that, and then it just gets better.
Well, it's unfortunate that I don't know of any studies either about that, and I think it's because it's just starting to become a new technique. And I think it's because for a long time, digital and print like to fight a little bit. And sometimes digital gets credit where maybe print, was doing some really important branding. But I think we've learned that we can live in this world together. We're actually both very important in a well-rounded approach. But I do
no bias, by the way, coming from you, Angie. No bias whatsoever.
No bias whatsoever. But it's really fun, actually. It's interesting because I have quite a few digital marketing companies now reaching out and getting more creative with that direct mail being a part of their campaigns. Yeah. And I think the thing that we're realizing, and there's something about a tangible piece that gains attention, keeps attention, it actually builds a certain level of trust. And I think the reason why, that sounds kind of funny to me. The first time I heard that, I thought, well, how much trust can you really get by picking up a postcard? But there is, just because there are some companies out there that they do have the budget to throw out an ad and put up a beautiful website, but maybe there's not a substantial company behind all of that. Yeah. As if somebody's spending the money for a tangible, direct mail marketing campaign, probably there's some longevity there, there's some budget there, and it does kind of give you the perspective of trust. Not that it necessarily means that one company is more trustworthy than the other, but it does kind of give the feeling like, oh, okay, if they're in the newspaper, we can trust them.
Yeah, newspaper, what's that?
What is that? I know. Well,
how wild is that, right? Like, who's getting the newspaper now? If you want to market your retirement folks or your assisted living center, have them market in the newspaper, because the only people reading that are their target demographic, right?
Yeah. Well, it's super funny. I was actually talking to somebody just a couple of days ago, and he said one of the most effective campaigns he's ever done is he ran the full back page of the newspaper, the two local newspapers here. And the campaign was brilliant. It was only, 4 or 5 words with a great image and just a few details at the bottom. It was actually for a lending company. And they said off of that one ad, they did hundreds of millions of dollars in loans because it was a new program that nobody knew of. And I actually said, oh, those were the good old days when we could, advertise in the newspaper. And he said, oh, no, that was just a few years ago. So I was really surprised. I think I wrote off newspapers just a little too soon. Yeah. So they do exist still. That's a whole different conversation. But like you said, like knowing your audience is important when you're choosing which medium you want to be a part of. So it's kind of funny.
I see. And this, I don't have, I didn't have a class about this. Consumer behavior maybe a long time ago, but one of the things that I have found consistently true is that people remember a lot less about what you say, but they remember how you make them feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is where I think direct mail trumps everything, is because you can use things like even nostalgia, right? Like that's why I like the floppy disk idea. I've used that once before in a different world and had a similar excitement in the market when I used it, but there's something nostalgic about that. Or like if my kids are starting to run a baseball card collecting, business, but there's something kind of nostalgic about old baseball cards.
Right.
And so if you're targeting a demographic that grew up in the 80s, right, when that was huge for me, like as a kid, I was running rackets and knocking doors, selling things, and as a kid, so I could go save up 50 cents and go buy a pack of baseball cards and eat that terrible gum, right? But
Oh, it was terrible, powdery.
like cardboard, but it was like heaven, as a little kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you can find a way to connect emotionally with people in your audience with something that you send to them physical, like it's physical, you'll connect with them way better than a text or an email. The next best thing is a phone call. But I agree, you said it before, but I think there's something about sending something physical, whether they trust you more, but I think that it creates a little bit of connectivity with them where they start to associate you now with, oh, you're the one that sent me that funny postcard. And because you made them feel that way as a brand.
Yeah, I think that's super important. Well, and anything that is engaging or fun, or we had a client that sent a little package out with their printed material inside, but they had a lock and a key, a physical lock and key. And they said that was one of the best campaigns they've ever done, just because it engaged people. And it's funny how, sometimes we can be entertained in really simple ways, but they said that those pieces, they made it up to the CEO, and they were just a fun little thing that they could open the lock and get some messaging out of it, and just fun and interesting. I also think the nostalgia probably played a big part in the record player campaign.
I think so. Yeah.
Because I think record players have come back a little bit. My daughter has a record player. I didn't think that would ever happen again. But they did this campaign in 2009. And so I think that was a window of time where nobody had record players anymore. I mean, kids would probably say, oh, what is that? So kind of a fun. So anything that instigates some emotion is always going to be, your best bet in any type of marketing, actually.
Yeah, I hear you. That's a great idea. So we've talked a little bit about like, how do you make things stand out? Maybe connecting with nostalgia or something creative, something that's unexpected, or, I haven't done this yet, but I've been tempted because of the price, like getting a bunch of $2 bills. And then, now you're not supposed to write on them. I've actually seen people, it's illegal. It's a federal offense if you stamp a message on a $2 bill. And guess what? That's going to get circulated and someone's going to find it and you might get your,
we don't recommend that.
Yeah, but attaching a pre-printed Post-it note to a $2 bill or something like that, like people, if they open an envelope and they find cash in it, they'll be like, what the heck? Oh, right. Message on here, right? Like, and people would connect with you about that. So, but have you seen anything else where it really stood out, like something super creative that people could piggyback on that would be easy to ship? Because that's the other trick is, I know people that have done 2-part where they'll ship like one walkie-talkie, and then they ship another one if people respond to it. Those are super effective, but crazy expensive, mostly B2B stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I would say that knowing the lifetime value of your client and really knowing, if you have budget to spend, doing a $3,000 or $4,000 campaign, to 100 people is worth it if one new client is going to pay for the campaign. So that's super important. But I will show you really quick, and for the audio listeners, they can check out the website or just Google video brochures. But a lot of people haven't seen these. They're actually a printed piece with a video inside.
Oh yeah, those are
and
cool.
So just really fun, and they come in all shapes and sizes. But the thing that's nice about them is, they're a tangible piece, but it has video inside, and so that's where all the digital marketers' ears will perk up, because everyone knows how effective video is, but sometimes delivering it can be challenging, especially because some people might not want to click a link because they're afraid it could, be a virus, or it just gets lost in the email, or, I mean,
Yeah.
for sure. And, the challenges of social media marketing. I mean, social media is great, and video on social media is even better, but you're still maybe missing some people. And if you have a really specific target, sending a video brochure to a CEO with a really well done video, we're seeing companies having a 60 to 70% response rate. And it's just because it's tangible. And the messaging, the messaging is important in that, but that's really, kind of a fun way. But like you said, some things are easier to mail than others. And so choosing that and keeping that in mind is important. I mean, but if you have the budget to send a paddle, you're going to get some attention with that piece. So
that's great advice. I forgot about the video brochures, but I know you've shown me one of those before. In fact, I actually have got it right here. Hold on. I'll pull that. Now, the people listening won't be able to see it. I put it there because it was cool. So it's a little dusty, but I mean, you get a custom printed package in the mail and it's heavy. You're like, what the heck is in this thing? You open it up and there's like this video in there that as soon as I open it up, I'm like, oh, I've got options here. I need to watch this thing. But you showed another one just a second ago. But I mean, I open this thing up and it's in bubble wrap and it's got like a plug with it. So it's like super curious. And I think that's where things like this, they really connect with people. And as soon as I open it up, it's like, the video screen pops up and turns on. This thing has been plugged in for forever. So anyway.
And it's cool.
Very cool.
I mean, things like that people have never seen. Most people haven't seen video brochures. And so, they're new and novel. They won't always be, but for right now, they're fun and exciting. So I think that's important. But then also the ease of mailing things. I mean, most people don't have the budget to send something that's giant. Just because postage, even for a small piece like that you just showed, the postage on that's going to be about $5 plus the cost of the item. Still very effective, but cost is a factor. But I mean, honestly, usually if you have an item, we can mail it. And so, different shapes and sizes almost don't matter. I mean, they'll drive up cost, but there's not a lot of restrictions actually. I mean, you probably don't want to send a pack of batteries in the mail.
Aerosol or
aerosol,
probably.
Yeah, like maybe look at those restrictions. But other than that, if you have it, you probably can mail it. But
one thing I'll add to that though, I've seen this before because I worked for a company where we were very specific and very targeted, and they were going to do something where they were going to ship watches, something a little expensive, because our lifetime customer value was, the annual customer value sometimes was 7 figures. And so they're like, well, why don't we ship them a nice watch with a message on the back of it, which is a cool idea. One thing, if you're B2B, you've got to be very careful of is gifting, corporate gifting policies.
Right.
Usually it's $25 or under, or they have to turn it back. Sometimes I've worked with some where we'd send them just like a shirt, like a hoodie. Like they would send it back and say, I'm so sorry, but I think it was J&J or DuPont. One of those customers, they're like, we just can't accept any gifts at all. Oh, it was a backpack. We sent them a backpack. That was really nice. It was like $100 backpack, but they're like, I can't take anything.
Yeah.
So just be careful of that. Know your space, right? If you're selling into legal offices, they'll be a little more careful about taking gifts than the marketing department would be somewhere. Sometimes they don't really care about that stuff.
Yeah. Well, and same thing, and most attorneys are going to know the laws, of course, hopefully, if they're an attorney. But we've worked with some insurance agencies that have, maybe done some offers that were frowned upon. And so really, keeping in mind that usually the direct mail company is going to do whatever you tell them to do and happily help you come up with a really creative piece, like a backpack or a watch. Those are great ideas. But yeah, I think also as the business owner yourself, making sure that there aren't any restrictions there that apply to you can save you a bundle for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, well, we've got a few minutes left. I've got a few other questions, mostly kind of examples. And if we can, let's focus on B2C. We've talked B2B for a little bit. Would you mind sharing maybe a great example of what not to do if you're going to do a B2C campaign?
Yes, yes. And I'll actually use myself as an example. This is kind of a funny story, but I've always been an entrepreneur since I was a kid. But when I was early 20s, this was about 23 years ago, my husband and I started our first company together. And it was actually a pretty good idea, and I think it could have taken off, but we scraped up whatever little money we had after starting the business. We had our little budget for marketing left over, and we bought a half-page ad in a national sports magazine. And, we thought, this is big time. It's going to go to 100,000 sports fans, subscribers across the country. And, we're bound to get a lot of traction from this ad. It's a pretty good size ad. And then we proceeded to fill it with about as much 8-point text as we possibly could fit.
Oh, yeah.
It was before I knew anything about marketing. And I really, really thought that those people wanted to hear every single detail about our company in that one little half-page ad. And shockingly, we actually got a response and had some people call us and become our customers. And it's also funny because they were the most analytical customers we've probably ever met. And that's the reason why they were willing to read the ad. But honestly, I say this with all the empathy in the world and, knowing because I made the mistake, but it's really, really easy to fall into the trap of let's tell everyone that sees our ad, let's tell them as much as possible about our business as we can. And even people with good intentions will reach out and say, we really like a good, clean ad, and we want it to be, clean and clear messaging, but then proceed to send, paragraphs. And so our job often is to just gently lead them into filtering that message down. And then telling stories about the company that did the full page ad, but it was basically 4 words and a headline and a big image, and was super effective. Whereas if they would have filled that huge ad with a bunch of fine print, it's not going to be as effective. So that is the biggest mistake we see, is people trying to say too much in too little space. This isn't specific to print advertising or direct mail advertising, but really we have 1 to 3 seconds to capture their attention. And within that 1 to 3 seconds, we like to tell our customers that's how long you have to have them know who you are, what you're offering, and what's in it for them. And that's not a lot of time. And so keeping the words at a minimum, everyone's a skimmer. And then, if they're interested after 3 seconds and, that really brief introduction to your company, they'll go to your website, they'll call you, they will reach out. I think our company 23 years ago was actually a great idea. And we just, briefly sent our message out there, and then they, could have reached out. Who knows how well that little ad would have done.
Yeah, probably better. You've reminded me of another thing I'll share. I was working for a company, and the marketing department was, had a bunch of energetic young people in it, and we're getting ready for a big conference, like our big conference of the year. And this one got me in trouble because I tend to be fairly clear, I tend to communicate directly with people, and intentions are never. I'm usually not like being a butthead, but anyway, they did all this. They did this stuff, and they wrote this messaging, and it had nothing to do with our target audience. And there was also no call to action anywhere on any of the signage they prepared, on anything. There was 0 call to action. I was like, I hate to be the guy to say this. I know you've already printed stuff. However, we've got no call to action in the flyer you're saying, and the emails that you've sent out, or this poster that we're going to have. We need to have something what are we actually trying to get them to do? Are we going to have them do this? Are we going to have them do that? And as I recall, we pulled something together. They actually didn't want to do it, so I did something myself. And then the CEO was like, "No, you guys help support our growth and do this thing." But the call to action, it didn't end up driving millions of dollars. It wasn't like a big success story, but I see it a lot. I've received direct mail pieces, and it was like, give me a call if you need something. And we're lucky they put a phone number on the postcard. But sometimes there's no URL, there's no backlink into this digital aspect of the campaign. And so me as a user, I get it. I'm like, okay, I'm excited a little bit, but now what do I do? It's like if I got this and I open this up and I watch the video message, and then there was nothing for me to do afterward, like no URL, no here's an email, no here's a phone call. We just have to make sure there's a clear call to action in any media or digital marketing that we're doing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Unless your only goal is branding, which usually those are the largest companies that they've already laid the groundwork with the advertising, with call to action. They have a huge client base. And then, you know, if you're Pepsi and just want to put up a billboard with a, you know, clever saying, you can, because you're Pepsi. and it keeps people top of mind. There doesn't have to be that super clear call to action. But most businesses are not in that situation. And certainly at a trade show or a conference, you know, the point of doing it is to have action happen. So again, I would, you know, revert back to the what's the goal. And I mean, we're in Utah, and so this won't mean anything to some people, but the billboards all up and down the freeway for Domo, the software company here, I think I solidly saw those billboards for 3 years and didn't know what they were. I didn't know what the company was, but boy, they were funny. And it actually made me really, I thought, I don't know who these Domo guys are, but I sure like them. And I think that was their goal.
Yeah,
and so
you wanted you to have an emotional response so that as you start looking for your next job, they attract the best talent. Or if you're a CIO and you're like, man, I need some dashboarding. Oh, wait, you know, BI intelligence. I need to go talk to the Domo guys. It locally was pretty good. I think it was mostly, I heard in a presentation, it was mostly for they were trying to make it a recruiting campaign. So the best talent would be attracted to it. But still, it was physical media that was visible, and I think it worked pretty well for them.
Yeah. But for us and for our typical client, we definitely focus on call to action. And, you know, I mean, we just use the phrase, it's all on the offer. You could have the best ad in the world, but if you don't have a great offer or what's in it for them, how is what you're advertising going to benefit them? And then a clear call to action of how to get it, you know, it's not going to be nearly as effective. So
a call to action that's actually actionable. Like that's the challenge.
Exactly.
That's great. Well, good words of wisdom. Angie, I appreciate you making time to visit with us. Do you have any parting words of wisdom or anything else you'd share from your years of experience doing direct mail?
Yeah, probably just one more thing. Consistency is everything. So, there have been some businesses that genuinely didn't have budget, and, you know, I would rather not take somebody's money if they only have time to, you know, they only have budget to run something one time when I know that it's going to take several times to really pay off for them, which is a challenge. You know, I have my customers' best interest in mind always. But, you know, unless you've got the ability to stick to it and kind of the stomach for it, because sometimes the first couple aren't going to produce the way you may want, you know, just staying consistent. You know, direct mail is one of the best ways to build a brand, but it's not going to happen overnight. Being consistent is super important.
That's great. Well, Angie, let's wrap up on the note. Again, thanks for joining us and sharing your expertise. And everybody, thanks for listening to the Advisory Board podcast. And look forward to talking to you again next week.
All right. Thanks so much, Dave.
Yeah, you're welcome.